At 2:14, on the 30th of January 2026, in the international waters adjacent to the Strait of Hormuz, the roar of an MH-60R Seahawk helicopter pierced the night. It hovered merely 15 meters above the deck of the mysterious cargo ship, the Volga Dream. With the ramp wide open and the wind whipping around them, 6 commandos from SEAL Team 6 were in position, their gloved hands gripping the fast rope, awaiting the signal to rappel down and seize control of the vessel. Their objective was to intercept a shipment of advanced technology suspected of violating the latest U.S. sanctions. Everything was proceeding perfectly when, suddenly, the Seahawk's electronic warfare system was completely paralyzed. The pilot's HUD screen went dark, accompanied by a deluge of incoming missile alarms. 4 rusted containers on the Volga Dream's deck abruptly slid open, revealing Club K missile launchers locked onto the American formation. But that wasn't the worst of it. Immediately afterward, technical reconnaissance from the 5th Fleet reported shocking news. Deep within the ship's hull lay the strategic Merman BN electronic warfare system, AI 2026 version, and at its heart, a high-concentration radioisotope power generator. The entire Special Forces team fell into a heavy silence, facing a suffocating and unprecedented situation. If they fired upon the ship, armor-piercing shells could detonate the energy core below, creating a radioactive catastrophe at the entrance to the Strait of Hormuz. But if they let it pass and dock in Iran within the next 4 hours, American air superiority in the Middle East would permanently collapse. How would the Pentagon possibly resolve this explosive situation without igniting a global conflict? That's precisely what we're about to uncover. Welcome to Border Watch Daily, where we delve into the most audacious military strategies and their untold stories. The answer lay in an audacious and desperate decision made 8 hours earlier. 8 hours before the confrontation, the American KH-11 satellite had captured the first images of the Volga Dream, sailing without a flag and transmitting no AIS signal as it began to leave deep waters. But far beyond initial expectations, it was not alone. 30 Iranian-flagged fishing vessels surrounded it, moving in an extremely tight formation, less than 50 meters from each other. These ships continuously transmitted civilian AIS identification signals, moving chaotically to form a perfect human shield, making any attempt at a precise long-range attack a risky gamble. Yet, the real danger was not limited to the fishing boats. As soon as this formation entered international waters, the situation screens on the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln began to display unusual white noise interference. Naval intelligence quickly confirmed that the adversary had activated a specialized GPS, GNSS jamming module inspired by POL 2.1 technology, secretly installed on the Volga Dream's deck. This system instantly created an invisible shield with a radius of 50 kilometers, completely blocking GPS positioning signals in the area. This meant that the United States' long-range precision strike weapons, from Tomahawk cruise missiles to smart glide bombs, became useless. If a missile were deliberately fired into this interference zone, there was a high risk it would miss its target and strike a civilian vessel. Russia and Iran were openly defying the United States. Would the U.S. dare to fire, accepting the risk of causing a civilian massacre? Or worse, providing a pretext for an all-out war? Refusing to accept this humiliation, the admiral commanding the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group decided to deploy the onion-peeling tactic. The objective was to use non-lethal physical pressure to disperse the civilian cover, forcing the Volga Dream to stop without firing a single missile. 2F, A, 18F, Super Hornet Block. 3 fighters immediately received their orders and separated from the MQ-25 Stingray tanker drone at an altitude of 9,144 meters. They plunged headfirst towards the sea at Mach 1. 2. Performing a terrifying low-altitude pass directly over the formation of fishing boats. The supersonic boom ripped through the air, creating formidable acoustic pressure designed to induce extreme panic and force the fishing boats to scatter. Simultaneously, the destroyer USS Spruance accelerated to cut through the enemy formation, activating its high-power long-range acoustic device and high-pressure water cannon, sending a stern message demanding that the Russian ship stop its engines for inspection. According to all previous scenarios, the motley flotilla of fishing boats should have dispersed under this overwhelming military pressure. But the reality of the 2026 battlefield delivered a severe blow to Pentagon doctrine. The fishing boats did not scatter. On the contrary, they simultaneously accelerated, turning their bows and charging straight at the USS Spruance's flank like suicide arrows in the style of the formidable Iranian maritime militias. At the same moment, a nightmare descended from the sky. The Volga Dream's electronic warfare system suddenly changed mode, concentrating a high-energy beam on the two low-flying F-18S. America's most advanced AESA radar was overwhelmed by white noise, and the guidance sensor system began to misidentify the environment. One Super Hornet reported a severe flight control system error, falling into an uncontrolled state and nearly crashing into the sea, forcing the pilot to deploy a flare and perform an emergency climb to reset the system. The onion-peeling tactic failed completely. The destroyer USS Spruance was encircled by a pack of suicidal vessels, forcing it to slow down and retreat to avoid physical collision. The Volga Dream remained completely safe, continued to accelerate, and was now less than 74 kilometers from Iran's deadly anti-air zone. Capitalizing on the American formation's disarray due to electronic interference and the risk of collision, the enemy decided to launch a punitive strike to end the game. From an altitude of 7,620 meters, the E-2D Hawkeye advanced early warning aircraft suddenly screamed on the emergency frequency as its radar detected 12 intense heat signatures emanating from mobile launchers along the Iranian coast, 150 kilometers away. These were 12 Cedar anti-ship missiles, Iran's upgraded long-range version, hurtling like a pack of hungry wolves. They rapidly descended to dangerous altitudes, executing a sea-skimming tactic, flying just 3 meters above the waves at near-sonic speeds, Mach 0.9. At this extremely low altitude, they were virtually invisible to the long-range radars of American warships, masked by the ocean's wave clutter, reducing reaction time from several minutes to mere tens of seconds. General Quarters alarm blared throughout the USS Spruance. The code "Vampire, Vampire" flooded the communication channels. In an instant, the CIWS Phalanx close-in weapon system and CRAM missile launchers on the American destroyer automatically switched to maximum combat mode, spewing walls of 20mm fire and interceptor missiles to form a vital protective dome. Although the incoming targets were shot down, the pressure of the attack forced the American warship to perform extreme evasive maneuvers, completely breaking the initial encirclement. The United States had fallen into a trap, fleeing merchant ships ahead, continuous coastal missile strikes from behind, and all around, suicidal vessels ready to ram. Exploiting this deadly breach, the Volga Dream released a thick smokescreen to blind remaining optical sensors and accelerated at full speed towards its destination. The distance to the safety zone was now only 37 kilometers. If it crossed this line, Iran's S-500 air defense system and ballistic missiles would activate, transforming the sky into a no-fly zone. The chance of stopping it by conventional means was now zero. In this desperate situation, tactical commanders on the surface were almost powerless. The 5th Fleet Command decided to deploy SEAL Team 6. The plan was to take advantage of the darkness and chaos from the previous attack to fly the MH-60R helicopter at an extremely low altitude, exploiting the radar blind spot between the two formations to drop the SEALs to intercept and force the ship to stop head-on. And this was the moment at 2:14 that we observed at the beginning of this story. The gamble failed miserably. The SEALs were detected, and the Club K missiles on the Volga Dream's deck were raised and locked onto their target. The fate of the Special Forces soldiers and the entire operation now hung in the balance, measured in seconds. The 5th Fleet Admiral realized that conventional firepower was useless. A physical shock was needed to stop the ship without destroying it. The combat order was coded and transmitted to a depth of 400 meters using very low frequency LF signals to where the United States' true ace, the Virginia-class nuclear attack submarine SSN 774, had been silently tracking the target for 4 hours, hidden beneath a thermocline to avoid sonar detection. Receiving a red alert signal from the SEAL team, the submarine commander understood he could not wait for orders from the Pentagon. He decided to fire a single Mk-48 ADCAP heavy torpedo. The target was not the Volga Dream's hull. The guidance data was set to an empty water coordinate located exactly 10 meters directly beneath the enemy ship's rotating propeller. The torpedo advanced, activating its proximity detonator. The PBXN-103 explosive charge detonated, creating a giant cavitation bubble. In an instant, the bubble collapsed under the pressure of the deep waters, creating a jet of water that shot to the surface with the force of a colossal 137 bars of pressure. The shock lifted the stern of the 15,000-ton ship out of the water. The shockwave instantly broke the hardened steel propeller shaft, and the rudder jammed. More critically, the violent tremor caused the radar guidance systems of the Club K launchers on the deck to become misaligned, losing their lock on the MH-60R helicopter. The ship lost its direction and drifted freely. The SEAL team narrowly escaped death. The monster had been crippled, and the Iranian fishing boats behind it rushed frantically to its rescue. Although the Russian ship had been disabled, they did not give up easily. American maritime surveillance radar detected 4 large thermal signatures erupting from the nearby naval base of Bandar Abbas. These were boghammer fast attack crafts from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, equipped with 2 3mm cannons and man-portable missiles, slicing through the water at a frantic speed of 148 kilometers per hour. They were rushing to encircle the drifting Volga Dream, ready to use super-strong cables to tow it into Iranian territorial waters, now less than 26 kilometers downwind. If they arrived and established a protective formation, the United States would be unable to attack without causing casualties among Iranian soldiers, which would equate to a declaration of war. Only 5 minutes remained to prevent the boghammer crafts from reaching the Volga Dream. The MH-60R helicopter was forced to ascend and emergency withdraw with the SEALs to avoid anti-aircraft fire from the crafts rushing towards them. The responsibility for finishing off the cargo ship now fell to a ghost flying in the stratosphere, the F-35C Block 4 stealth fighter. The pilot received the order to execute the final surgical strike. The weapon chosen was the intelligent AGM-158C LRASM anti-ship missile. But it was a true gamble. The GPS system in the area was still jammed by the devices left on the enemy ship. The missile would not be able to find its way via satellite. It had to rely entirely on its electro-optical sensor and AI algorithm to find its target. The challenge lay in the fact that the pilot was not allowed to sink the ship. The target to be destroyed was the ultra-high voltage generator compartment exposed on the ship's deck, the sole life source for the Merman BN system, and the radioactive core's cooling system. The F-35C banked its wings and released the LRASM missile from an altitude of 9,144 meters. The missile glided silently, activating its thermal imaging mode. It had to thread its way through the narrow gap between the Boghammer crafts, which were wildly rushing towards it, and strike a target of only 2 square meters on a ship violently tossed by strong waves. It was a needle's eye maneuver at 1,000 kilometers per hour. If the missile deviated 1 meter to the left, it would strike an Iranian boat. War would erupt. If it deviated 1 meter downwards, it would pierce the hull and strike the radioactive core, triggering a nuclear catastrophe. The entire 5th Fleet Command Center held its breath as the red dot on the screen plunged. The fate of the entire campaign, and perhaps the fragile peace in the Middle East, rested on the tip of that intelligent missile. The LRASM missile plunged at an 80-degree angle, piercing the thin steel hull of the generator room on the Volga Dreams deck. There was no shattering explosion. Instead, the penetrating warhead triggered a chain reaction within the electrical system. An electric arc, with temperatures reaching 20,000 degrees Celsius, instantly erupted, melting the entire circuit board, AI processing chip, and antenna system of the Merman BN complex. In an instant, the heart of this billion-dollar monster transformed into a charred, useless mass of metal. The pressure from the electric arc explosion in the confined space tore open the bottom of the Volga Dream. The ship broke in two and began to sink rapidly. Since the electrical system had melted, no detonation signal was transmitted to the mini-nuclear core, and it sank to a depth of 2,000 meters with the ship's wreckage, where the immense water pressure would crush and permanently bury this technological secret. No radiation escaped to the surface. The Iranian crafts frantically circled the sinking wreckage, but were powerless to save it. The strategic objective had been accomplished. The skies of the Middle East remained under the control of the U.S. Navy. But before the American admiral could breathe a sigh of relief, an urgent, encrypted message from the NSA arrived at the command post, confirming a second Merman BN signal moving across the Syrian border. The Pentagon had anticipated it. Iran would never put all its eggs in one basket, and the war was only just beginning. Where was the second ship?